Welcome to the Wise Guy show. I'm not a wise guy, but for all intents and purposes, I fill that function right here on YouTube. It's the end road, at least in terms of the regular season in the NFL. It is week 18, the last of the last week of the NFL's regular season. And I'm not going to go through all the games at this point. I'm doing this a little early, but I'm going to go through some of the games and kind of try to decide whether I'm going to do playoffs. I think I will be doing playoffs. Will be see. I'm trying to decide whether I'm going to do maybe like one big playoff episode or I'm going to do separate playoff episodes week to week. It depends. But we're at the end of the road for the regular season here with the Wise Guy show. And before I go further, to those that have watched it, those viewers, whether you're subscribers or whether you're just tuning in from elsewhere, thank you for watching. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for looking at the show week after week after week. This is a bit of an experiment for me. It's short form sports, and I'm not really a sports guy, although I'm on a show called The Writer Report. I don't really do that in regards to what I normally do. Normally, I write 2 film newsletters on Substack, and I have my podcast, one of which is a film podcast, another which is a writing podcast. So I'm not really a professional sports guy, but I seem to be kind of pushed into the sports world this year, more so than last year when I did my podcast outside the NFL. So, week 18. So let's go over some of the scores. I'm not going to go over everything. I never do on the show. But let me just go over some of the scores here and take a look at what's to come, and maybe take a look at what I think what's going to happen in the postseason a little. The Saturday, there were a couple Saturday games, no Monday night game, and of course no Thursday night game this last week. The Buccaneers, and this is probably one of the strangest of the playoff implication game. In fact, the strangest of the playoff implication games. The Buccaneers beat the Carolina Panthers in a close contest. They managed to win this time. They managed to win this game. But here's the rub. The Buccaneers will not go to the playoffs. Why, you ask? Because the Atlanta Falcons beat the New Orleans Saints. And because the Falcons have similar records, and because the only way that in that division, which would be the NFC South, that a winner of the division could be picked at this point. Because the Falcons managed to beat the Rams last week, they improved their record, and thus this sets up the need for the Falcons to lose if the Buccaneers wanted to win. So winning for the Buccaneers against the Carolina Panthers wasn't enough. It might have been enough, I think, if Atlanta had won and the records weren't the way they were. But they did win. They did beat the Rams. And hello to those in the chat. They did beat the Rams. The Falcons did. So, and the Falcons beat the New Orleans Saints in a good game. It was a nice back and forth game. But the Falcons won, and despite the fact that the Buccaneers had won on Saturday, they still lost when it came to the playoffs because they're not going to the playoffs. Tampa Bay will not go to the playoffs. The Carolina Panthers will go to the playoffs. And I'm going to be on the record here as saying I like that. I like that Carolina is going to the playoffs. I looked at Tampa Bay in the last few weeks, and they just looked like a team that was spent, just defeated in many respects. They played a good game against the Panthers. You know, the Buccaneers were sharp in the first couple of series offensively that they did. First couple of drives, they were able to score. They looked better than they had in a long time. But the reality was that this is a team that, despite injuries, I know people will talk injuries, this team, I think, just wasn't able to get it done. They lost a lot of games, And I think they had a tough schedule. I mean, they were up against teams like the Patriots. The Patriots ran all over them, used to run effectively against them. They played the Bills, and that was a back and forth. The Buccaneers had a really good game there, but they playing a very tough opponent. They had some tough games. Even the Miami game they lost before this one. Miami has played a lot better, and they're a much better team than they were earlier in the season. So yeah, when it comes to the Buccaneers, I just felt this team needed to be put out of its misery and not go to the playoffs. And I think the fact that Atlanta beat the Saints allowed the Panthers to go. Now, in regards to Panthers, I think this is an important season for them because they've been able to kind of not only win some games, they didn't have a great season, but I think this is a good season in comparison, considering they've been a bad team for a number of years. And they've not only come up in terms of improving their record, not a winning record, but it's a good improvement to now being in the playoffs. So I think this is a win-win year for the Carolina Panthers. Not so much because they go to the playoffs, but I think because it's an improved year, they won more games, they've beaten some good teams. They beat the Rams, a very impressive win. They beat the Green Bay Packers in a good game, really good, solid game. So I would say that this was a good year. Unfortunately, with the Panthers, they're hot and cold. They're hit and miss. But at least they won a game and lost a game here, unlike Tampa Bay, who just kept losing and losing and losing and losing. So congratulations to the Carolina Panthers for getting to the playoffs. And I'm going to be interested in seeing how Bryce Young fares in the playoffs. To me, it doesn't matter whether the Panthers win or lose. It's a win-win year for them. And it's a good year ultimately for them. Um, Next up is Seahawks versus 49ers. This was a major game because it's for number one seed in the NFC and division title. And the Seahawks were just able to dominate, not so much through scoring, although the differential was clearly in their favor. Point differential was in their favor. But I think they were able to just dominate. The interesting thing about this game, though, was, the Seahawks were able offensively to move down the field with a great deal of discipline and precision. But they got huddled up near the end zone. And the 49ers defense, to their credit, did a very good job of stopping them. And they forced them to get turnovers at some point during the game. They did score a touchdown, but forced the turnovers. And so the Seahawks, they've gotta watch that going into the playoffs. That's a potential Achilles heel for the Seahawks, is getting bottled up in the end zone. Now, it happened in that game, and I think it also happened in the Colts. The Colts kind of kept them out of the end zone. So I think that when you look at that offense, that's a potential hazard for the Seattle Seahawks going into the playoffs. But the Seahawks, they proved that they could win games in any fashion. And that's the thing about this team that I really like. They were able to win solely through field goals when they played the Colts. They're able to win by scoring a lot of touchdowns like they did against the Cardinals. They were even able to win at the end when they played the Rams in, to me, what seemed more like an NFC championship game than a regular season game. And I've been saying all throughout this year that I think the teams that should go for the NFC are either the Rams or the Seahawks. Personally, I would rather see either one of those teams. The only other team that I wouldn't mind seeing in the Super Bowl for the NFC would be Chicago Bears. But I think, if all goes well, it'll be that way. But the Seahawks had a good, solid win against the 49ers. 49ers defense, they put up a good fight. They stopped the Seahawks from getting into the end zone at times, but they weren't really able offensively to get things going, and thus fell to the Seahawks. But the 49ers have had a good year. I think that Shanahan has been able to get past the injury algorithm, as I call it, and play past that and effectively win. So it's an effective job of coaching from Shanahan. Getting to a couple other results that are interesting to me. Browns Bengals, Battle of Ohio. This game, is significant, of course, because Miles Garrett finally broke the single season sack record. But more importantly, I think more importantly, I think more importantly, this demonstrated that the game against the Steelers, where the Browns got a victory last week, wasn't entirely a fluke. That they were able to put together a couple of games and show that they're capable of playing effectively. And so that's what's very interesting about this game. Um, it looked. I think the Bengals made it a game. It was very close at times, but having the point after attempt fail, the two failed point after attempts, I think were a big factor in this game. And I think at the end of the day, I think the Browns were just hungrier in this game. I think they really wanted it. I think they wanted Miles Garrett to get that sack record. But more importantly, I think they wanted to win for Shedeur Sanders, and for this team as a whole. Um, I think a couple more, and then I'll be done. Vikings beat the Packers, and I got to be honest, I think the Packers have had a season that's kind of drained away from them in terms of their chances in the playoffs. They're going to the playoffs, but they're limping into the playoffs. They rested their players mostly. JJ McCarthy was in, and then he went out. I think it was an injury or re-aggravation of an injury. And the Vikings have kind of redeemed their season a bit. They were having a really problematic season. They started winning some games. I don't know what's going to happen with the Vikings. I think they have to find a way. They have to find a way, I think, to put together a couple of seasons, not just a season, but a couple of seasons of getting into the playoffs and being able to contend. I think that's the best thing that they need to work on right now. Managing, if they're going to go with JJ McCarthy, they can find a way that's healthy. They need a quarterback that's, backup that's going to be able to win games for them. And so it's going to be interesting to see what happens with the Vikings. They certainly won a number of games. This defense at times could play. I mean, they had a great game against the Lions. 5 turnovers, I think 5 sacks too. And so it's going to be, I don't know what's going to happen with the Vikings, but I think they need to focus on, trying to get JJ McCarthy out there. They're going to go with him and try to get into the playoffs and try to do that consistently, at least a couple seasons. Cowboys, Giants. I don't think Dallas wanted to win this game. That's the impression, because it was competitive, and Dak was taken out of the game like halfway through, which was interesting to me. And Joe Milton came in. You're down and you take your quarterback out. You could say that he was being rested, and that's fine, but I don't know if they're afraid of injuries or potential injuries for next year. That may be going through their head, but if that's the case, why have him play at all? I thought it was kind of an odd choice. And it was also odd that the Giants, who've had a terrible year this year, went out of their way to win this game when I think they should just kind of coast and focus on getting big, high draft picks. The Giants played a good game here. Jackson Dart looked good. They were able to score effectively. I just don't think the Cowboys were that motivated. I think, Jadeveon Clowney did a good job for the defense here, but I don't think they're motivated. Finally, Colts, Texans. It's hard to say right now, but Riley Leonard came in to play, and you have to give him more games. That's the proviso. but this is a potential star in the making. He had a great game, even though the Colts lost to the Texans. He had a great game. This was a very competitive effort. He had a great opening touchdown, deep ball to a Colts offensive player for a touchdown, and he ran in for a touchdown. He had a couple of things that went against him. He had a fumble and he had an interception, but this is a guy who clearly has the arm strength. He clearly can sling the ball. He clearly has talent as a passer. And if he's given enough time, this guy could be a potential star. He at least could turn into a decent quarterback. But this guy's on notice. I don't think anybody will be able to steal this guy away from the Colts right now. But I would, if I were some of these teams out there in the NFL, I would look to get the guy. And so you can offer something to the Colts to get that guy. Because I'm telling you, this guy is a potential star in the making if everything goes right. That's the proviso. Everything goes right. Texans won this. To be honest, they were able to. I don't think it was. I thought it was a good but not great offensive effort. They had Davis Mills come in later on in this game. I think that helped a great deal. I'm on record as saying Davis Mills really helped the Texans kind of improve this season and led to their kind of resurgence. But that was one of the best games of the week, was the Colts-Texans game. And Riley Leonard, if everything goes right, this guy could really be a star, at least a good quarterback. And that's it for this final regular season edition of the Wiseguy Show, getting you wise as to what's happening in the NFL right here on YouTube. Good luck, goodbye, and happy landings.